Once you cross 1.5 million in pre-tax accounts, saving more money into them isn't building wealth. It's building a tax problem you can't control. So in this video, I'm going to show you why net worth doesn't matter anymore past 1.5 million in pre-tax accounts, why the structure of your accounts matters more than the balance, and exactly what to do at each stage of retirement to stop handing extra money to the IRS. So why doesn't net worth matter anymore? See, most retirees use the balance of their accounts as the scoreboard, but to keep more of what you built, you need to stop focusing on the balance of your accounts and start focusing on the structure. Because two retirees can have the exact same balance, and depending on how it's structured, the government could take hundreds of thousands more from one than the other. And the reason this happens comes down to how the government treats each account type. And once you understand which accounts the IRS can and can't see, you can start being strategic about which account you take money from. With your traditional IRA and 401k, everything you take out is taxed as ordinary income, just like a paycheck. So every dollar that comes out gets seen by the government. But with Roth accounts, every dollar can be tax-free. It's like it's invisible. You can take out as much as you want without having to pay a penny in extra taxes or Medicare costs. Then, with taxable brokerage accounts, the IRS can only see part of what comes out. And what they do see gets taxed at a much lower rate. So a lot of that money stays hidden too. So now that you know what the IRS can and can't see, how do you choose which account to pull from? Well, it depends on how close you are to the next tax bracket or one of those Medicare thresholds. Let's say you want to take out money for a vacation. If you're within a few $1,000s of crossing a threshold, take it from your Roth. The government can't see that money coming out, so you stay right where you are. Then if you have some breathing room, maybe $10,000 to $20,000 before hitting the next level, pull from your taxable brokerage account. You can pay a lower tax rate and still stay under the line. And if you're well clear of any thresholds, pull from your IRA. You're strategically pulling money out at a lower tax rate now before RMD is forced out at a higher one later. So now that you see how to use your accounts correctly, how do you actually build that structure? Well, the best way to do it depends on the phase of retirement you're in, whether you're still working, recently retired, or already taking RMDs. So to show you exactly what to do at each phase, we're going to use Mike as an example. He's 60, just crossed 1.5 million in his 401k and plans to retire at 65. And even though he thought he was doing all the right things, his strategy was quietly putting extra money in the government's pocket. So let's start with phase one, the last 5 years before retirement. When they're in their peak earning years, most people assume the best move is to put as much into their pre-tax 401k as possible. And for Mike, while he's working, he's in the 24% bracket. But once he retires, he'll fall into the 22%. So the conventional wisdom says keep saving into the 401k. Defer those taxes now and pay them later at a lower rate. And that saved him about $500 a year. So it sounds like a no-brainer. But let's look at what actually happens when he takes that money out. So once he retires, he'll have income from both Social Security and a pension. And when we add that 401k withdrawal on top, his income still stays comfortably inside the 22% bracket. But there's one more thing this calculation doesn't account for. What most people don't realize is that Medicare premiums are tied directly to your income, and 401k withdrawals count towards this. So when we look at what that withdrawal does to his Medicare costs, it pushes him just over the first level. And even though he barely crosses it, his premiums jump by a minimum of $1,000 each year. So even though he saved $500 in taxes, he gives those savings back and then some the moment he takes that money out. But the financial cost isn't even the worst part about Mike's strategy. Right now, he's directing all of his savings into his 401k. So when he gets to retirement, he'll have a $2 million balance, but nothing in Roth and nothing in a taxable brokerage account. So let's say he wants money for a vacation and retirement. Every dollar he touches will be fully visible to the IRS. And that means it counts towards those same Medicare thresholds we just looked at. So if he's near one of those cliffs, he has two choices: delay the trip or pay the penalty. And being forced to make that choice is what can make him feel trapped from using his own money, even with $2 million. So to avoid this, let's look at what Mike should have done instead. He doesn't want to totally stop putting money into the 401k, because he gets a match on the first 3%. So instead, he drops his 401k contributions down to 3% and puts the rest into a taxable brokerage account. And doing this means when he needs money for a vacation, he has a safety valve. Instead of being forced to take it from his 401k and risk crossing that Medicare threshold, he just pulls from the taxable account instead. So he's not forced to pay an unnecessary tax bill just to take a vacation. So that $500 Mike saved in taxes by continuing to max out his 401k cost him something far more valuable: the freedom to spend his money without the government taking a bigger and bigger cut. Next is phase 2, which is after you retire but before RMDs kick in. And this can be the most powerful phase for tax planning in retirement, but most retirees never capture it. So during this window, you don't have working income or forced withdrawals from RMDs. So your income can be the lowest it's been in decades. And this makes it the golden window for Roth conversions. You can choose to pay a lower tax rate on your retirement money now instead of a potentially higher one when RMDs kick in later. And Mike had heard about Roth conversions, but what nobody had shown him were the hidden costs that can come with them. So most people think a Roth conversion is just a tax decision. You pick a tax bracket, pay that rate, and you're done. But for someone retiring at 65 like Mike, the tax bill is just the starting point. Because on top of that, a Roth conversion is like pulling one lever that opens 3 separate doors. And behind each one, the government is waiting to add to that bill in ways most people never see coming. So door number 1 is your Medicare premiums. A conversion can increase your premium costs even if it doesn't change your tax bracket. Door number 2 is your Social Security becoming taxable. If you're near certain thresholds, a conversion can take your Social Security benefit from completely tax-free to 50 or even 85% taxable. Then door number 3 is a newer tax benefit most retirees don't know about yet: the additional senior deduction. When the One Big Beautiful Bill Act was passed, it added a $6,000 deduction for anyone over 65. But if your income gets too high, you start slowly losing it. And because a conversion counts as income, it can cost you that deduction. So now that you know the 3 doors a Roth conversion can open, let's see what it costs Mike when he opens them. And once you see the total, you might be surprised by the true cost. So we're going to use this simple scorecard to add up the costs of Mike's conversion. Let's say he converts $24,500, roughly what he was putting into his 401k each year in phase 1. At the 22% bracket, he'd pay about $5,400 in taxes. And that's the number most people would stop at. But now, let's add the cost of opening those 3 doors. Door number 1 is Medicare. So here's Mike's income before the conversion. He's comfortably underneath the first Medicare level. But when we add in the conversion, it pushes him just over the line. And even though he only crossed it by a few dollars, his premiums jump by over $1,000 each year. So that door adds about $1,200 in extra Medicare costs. Door number 2 is Social Security. Because Mike has a pension, his income is already high enough where his Social Security is fully taxable, even before the conversion. So for Social Security, nothing extra to our scorecard. Then door 3 is the senior deduction. Because the conversion counts as income, Mike slowly starts losing part of that deduction. And when we factor that in, it adds another $325 of hidden costs to our scorecard. So when we add it all up, Mike's real tax rate isn't the 22% he thought it would be. It's really 28%. So even though Mike's income is the lowest it's been in decades, he ends up paying a higher rate than when he was working, all because he looked at the bracket and never checked the doors. So how can you avoid the same mistake? Well, before you start converting, you need to check whether we'll open any of these 3 doors, not just what bracket you're in. And if you want to do this without building a complicated spreadsheet, I'll include a link for free access to the same software we used to look at Mike's conversion below. Just by clicking a few buttons, it'll show you exactly what your conversion actually costs, so you don't end up making the same mistake as Mike. Now, before we move to phase 3 of retirement, there's one more mistake that can trip up even the most careful planners. Because even after Mike calculated the perfect conversion amount, this mistake made him feel like someone locked up his money and threw away the key. So Mike had run the numbers ahead of time. And because he wanted to capture as much tax-free growth as possible, he did his conversion in January. And that logic made sense on paper. But later in the year, both his fridge and his furnace broke in the same month. But because he had already converted to Roth, he didn't have any room left to withdraw money without triggering higher Medicare costs. So now, if he wanted to do the home repairs he needed, it meant paying thousands more on top of that in extra Medicare costs. So unless you're confident you have enough Roth or taxable money to cover any surprises, it often makes sense to wait until the end of the year to convert, because until then, you don't actually know what your expenses will be. So phase 2 is all about using your window before the government takes control of your income. But phase 3 is about what to do when that window closes and the forced withdrawals start. Because without the right strategy to defend against them, they can trigger a cascade of tax consequences. So in phase 3, the best defense is actually good offense. Moving money out of pre-tax accounts in phase 2 reduces the consequences when RMDs start in phase 3. But just because RMDs have started doesn't mean the opportunity for planning strategies stops. And doing nothing because you think the opportunity is past is one of the biggest mistakes you can make. So when we look at Mike's income when that first RMD kicks in at 75, it puts him right in between the first and second Medicare tiers. And as he gets older and his accounts keep growing, his RMDs get bigger too. So by his 80s, he'll be pushed into the next tier, and his premiums will go up even more. And most retirees see this and think, if my RMD is already pushing me into higher costs, I'm not going to take out $1 more than I need to. But for Mike, the smartest move is actually to do the opposite. If those RMDs are going to push him into even higher Medicare costs later, and he has room in his current bracket, why not just take more out now? At this point, the goal is enjoying the money yourself instead of handing it over to the government. Because in his 80s and 90s, those forced distributions will be even bigger and harder to enjoy. So instead of waiting, he can spend that extra money now on himself or gift it to friends and family while he's still here to enjoy it with them. And by taking more now, he reduces what the government forces out later. So in phase 3, the planning isn't over. It just shifts from protecting the money to enjoying it before the government starts taking it away. So once you cross $1.5 million in pre-tax accounts, the goal isn't a bigger balance. It's a better structure. But if you want to truly feel confident retiring, there's something more important than both the balance and the structure. Because Fidelity just released new research on what confident retirees are doing differently, and it has nothing to do with the number on their statement. So to see exactly what the new research shows and the exact plan to create that confidence for yourself, check out this next video.